Hey, you all, I wanted to reiterate my appreciation for your devoted listenership to this podcast. I managed to do somewhat of a deep dive into my own data, and I'm kind of pleased with what I see. Numbers have been higher than I at least expected them to be when I look at all the cross information. I realize that it's impossible for you to see if you're in good company, as the subscription numbers aren't really public, so you can help that to a degree by going to your platform of choice and leaving me a review. It helps me with the algorithmic exposure, and at some point, when I cross certain numerical Rubicons, it becomes visible to you as well. I have moved to YouTube, if you haven't noticed, but I'll be sparing you the haunting specter of looking at me as a direct camera shot. It'll be an audio of the show for now, and so you can send it to all your friends to whom the idea of using the podcast app is as stressful as trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with a baseball mitt on each hand. And you know who I mean. In this technological age, in the world of Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Reddit, Rockfin, Twitter, Snapchat, Truth Social, Gab, and every other possible offshoot on the planet, I see too many people to whom the concept of adding Spotify to their media quilt is just some kind of horrifying bridge too far. Like they see Pennywise's red balloon rising up from a street drain. Anyway, this podcast is hopefully going to be big. And hopefully sooner rather than later. Thanks for being here now, so we can all say, remember when? Thank you, and peace out. On July 6, 2022, an explosive device was detonated in Elbert County, Georgia, effectively ending the 42-year reign of an enigma. A 13-foot-high set of granite slabs that have intermittently captured the attention of hobbyists, historians, eschatologists, and conspiracy theorists, known formally as the Georgia Guidestones, and what was supposed to have staying power in its enigmatic existence and placement was now a condemned site, headed for the ruins, and in fact was dismantled within a day. But what are they, or I should say, what were they, and who put them there? And did they ever deserve the over-the-pond comparisons to the ubiquitously famous British Neolith Stonehenge? We'll take a look today at box number 7. So, this all begins in June of 1979. Now, at the outset, I'm going to go on a small rant here and grant at the outset that the monolith in question is neither ancient nor created by a presumably extinct society, and so it does sort of rob the subject of the usual intrigue associated with things like Machu Picchu, Stonehenge, Pompeii, Herculaneum, the Valley of the Kings, and the pyramids in Giza. In fact, any good ghost story I ever grew up with always involved a house from the 18th century or even older and had a myriad of sins associated with it. How intriguing is a ghost story if it involves a staple store that operates during the day and is fully occupied during working hours? I mean, come on. You gotta have some, as they say, patina. Anyway, quite frankly, no self-respecting spirit from Dante's Ninth Circle would be caught haunting a Panera Bread either. But I commend the effort to imbue the Georgia Guidestones with such immense provocative power. It was commissioned by someone who used the name R.C. Christian, in effect, most likely meant to invoke an immediate bridge between Masonic craftsmanship and mathematical precision Christianity, and the R.C. part leaning into a possible shorthand reference for the Rosicrucian order. R.C. Christian states that the intended purpose of the monument was to act as a compass, calendar, and clock, and would maintain survivability in an apocalyptic turn of events. The large upright stones had been inscribed in English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian, with each panel making the same statements in each language. The primary goals lined out on the panels essentially read like this: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule, passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, and seeking harmony with the infinite. And be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. A few feet over to the west side of the monument was essentially an explanatory tablet, a Rosetta Stone of sorts, if you will, conveying the astronomic relations in the monument to include how a sunbeam traveling through the capstone would mark noontime throughout each year, how the horizontal slot indicates the annual travel of the sun, and how the channel through the stone indicates the celestial pole. Essentially, an overt value baked into the monument that is assumed to be baked into all places like Stonehenge, only Stonehenge didn't come with a user manual engraved into the stone. So, how does one in the contemporary age attempt to erect a monument that parrots the assumed worldviews, ceremonies, and overall esoteric thinking of bygone ages and apply it with a preposterous amount of spiritual gravity? Well, it seemed that the way to do it is to cloud as much of the origin in secrecy and then allow a few decades to erase the pencil lines even more. It sort of worked, but not entirely. The brochure showing the manufacturing of the Guidestones happens to proclaim the monument's placement in an area that happened to be deemed the granite capital of the world. It shows the use of block and tackle and modern engraving tools in use. Construction hats, ladders. This alone punches the guardian of Mysterium right in the solar plexus. But what about this mysterious R.C. Christian fellow? One of the more clever tactics here was the ultimate concealment of the person who underwrote the entire thing. It managed to involve at least a cursory agreement of non-disclosure on the part of the ones involved in the transaction. The land purchase from the original owner wouldn't be shrouded in ghost-written contracts, ethereal escrows, and faux facsimiles between legal entities, however. Furthermore, someone had to write the check, to underwrite the whole thing, to include the foundation prep work, placement, coding, and ceremonial revealment. All of this, well and good. Oddly enough, it's easy to dispense with the theory that there was any direct Masonic involvement, as it appears that the placement involved no cornerstone nor any stones that seem terribly precise, at least not to the levels set by the Masonic order so long ago. But this is the default setting. But there's an argument that whoever did it may have been working from a Rosicrucian template. The problem with this is the fraternal organizations are so complex in a historical context that I can't even begin to start down those rabbit holes without either getting lost or being woefully incomplete. It's clear that the Guidestones predate any of the Dan Brown/Da Vinci Code literature that uses the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, the Masons, the Hellfire Club, or even Skull and Bones as the backdrop for the books. Granted, they're a lot of fun, though, those books, I have to admit, especially Angels and Demons, by the way. But one look at the Guidestones tells you that whomever did it was limited in their philosophical expression and fell way short of anything that feels, clandestine, I guess. So let's go down the list of these things and address them one at a time. Slight bit of philosophical opining on my part, but not too much because this is a history podcast. Number 1, to prize truth, beauty, and love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Now, this phrase was going along nicely, and if it had said seeking harmony with others, would have made a simple, peace-loving statement. But The apparent dive into abstract terms like the infinite simply throws the entire statement into arbitrary waters. I don't know, some sort of Gnostic generalities, I guess. Number 2, balance personal rights with social duties. Yeah, I think I read this one before. From each according to his means, to each according to his, Karl Marx or something. Anyway, avoid petty laws and useless officials. Now, I can get behind that last part, although the prior issue of petty laws wouldn't be an issue without the existence of the latter. So this is sort of a self-solving conundrum. Number 4, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Well, we already do this. There's a technical term for it. War. By the way, Ambrose Bierce said in the Devil's Dictionary that war was simply God's way of teaching man geography from time to time. Number 5, unite humanity with a living new language. What? Apparently, my current language is unable to convey whatever that phrase means. And by the way, didn't the Tower of Babel teach anyone anything? Number 6, rule passion, faith, and tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Okay, I don't know. I don't even have a quip here. Number 7, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. All well and good, but national sovereignty seems to be an afterthought here, at least in the subtext of what's being said. Number 8, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Yeah, anyone up for some low-key eugenics? Because that's what it sounds like. Of course, we're getting ramped up for the next phrase, be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. And then a repeat, leave room for nature. Yes, I agree, although the oncology diagnosis seems to be left up to dubious people, which is actually quite a ghastly statement. And 10, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. It's this last one that has caused a speculation over the years about who placed the monument, because overpopulation doctrinaires all have at their core a subtlety about the supposed problem of overpopulation that manifests itself in the inevitable worldview of, quote, there's not enough of me, and quite frankly, there's way too much of you, unquote. Who would potentially sign on to the Guidestone tablets then? Well, there's Paul Ehrlich, the author of The Population Bomb, published in 1968. He predicted world starvation by the 1980s and advocated for coercive measures to reduce population. It should be noted that Paul Ehrlich is alive and well at 91 and technically continues to, I think they call it, populate the earth as we speak. A good candidate for the monument's establishment he would be. Then there's, of course, Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, who was no fan of increased population. He's 86 now and thus far has not joined the charter roster of the Hemlock Society's advocacy for taking what we could technically call the Socrates off-ramp. Not so good of a candidate, as he was always been more direct about his sentiments, and I'm not sure he held views as coercive and extreme as Mr. Paul Ehrlich. Then, of course, there is Bill Gates, the inventor of Windows computer platform and also a creeptastic acquirer of Midwestern farmland, i.e. a source for population sustenance, and also has a weird obsession about making sure that less people are on the planet. And his chosen vernacular on the matter is at best creepy when it comes to using things like vaccines for population reduction. Also, he has pasty white skin and looks completely washed out. And quite frankly, I avoid looking like Bill Gates. But he would be a great candidate. Oh, and in the end, I suspect it's this last, or really first commandment that most likely led to the demise of the monument. To talk about rendering human beings and dispatching them as ledger entries for the balance of the human portfolio is an extremely nihilistic position to take. I just read a book by David Grann called The Wager about the 1741 shipwreck of a British warship. Marooned men in a small boat were on edge. The minute someone starts talking about the hierarchical right to breathe makes them be the first person that needs to go overboard. or be shoved off on an island and left to ponder their newfound population reduction dogmas on an island all by themselves. So in the end, if you have a monolith that says, some of you need to die, and furthermore claimed some sort of bragging rights for your own apocalyptic longevity, it stands to reason that one day someone would snap and stick a pipe bomb in the middle of it and bounce out, stage left. Me, I'm not that extreme. I quite frankly wanted to see it. Although Paul Ehrlich's book is currently being used as a shim to level out a bookshelf in my garage, and one of those books is called What to Expect When You're Expecting. Anyway, who was it? Well, as it turns out, it appears none of the above-mentioned candidates that I just used as a platform to vent my spleen about those particular candidates. First of all, it turns out that R.C. Christian managed to write a manifesto. Now, to be honest, I would have been disappointed to find out that the hand in the monumental glove didn't write a manifesto. I mean, anyone that has protracted plans to delete people from the face of the earth in the name of some, quote, larger good has got to have a manifesto. In the case, the author wrote a book called Common Sense Renewed, showcasing a rabid case of unoriginality as his title piggybacks off the work of Thomas Paine, while his monument plays a pathetic second fiddle to Stonehenge. In the book, he elaborates on the 10 commandments listed in the monument. For instance, it will be necessary for well-informed citizens to work with knowledgeable physicians in establishing guidelines that will make possible a reasonable allocation or rationing of the care we can collectively afford. He wrote, favoring those individuals whose continuing lives are most valuable to society at large. That's right. That's as nihilistically dark as you can get. Lucifer would distance himself from a statement like that. He might advocate for it privately, but he even knows well enough not to put that directly in print. Anyway, I don't know about you, but I can feel the need for explosive ordnance making the case for itself, I got to admit, when it comes to those pesky Georgia Guidestones and their philosophical underpinnings. So anyway, it appears that a local banker in the area may have inadvertently revealed the identity of the Guidestones Brain Trust. A man named Wyatt Martin had to know the real identity in order to manage the financial transactions and municipal coding for the Guidestones, and in 2010, he stated that the secret would die with him. But while filming the footage for the documentary Dark Clouds Over Elberton, Martin was surmising that the revelatory documents in his possession would be book-worthy. The producers convinced him to pull out and briefly open a case in which all the answers would be contained. As he displayed the letters, one had an address in Fort Dodge, Iowa, belonging to a physician named Herbert H. Kirsten. Now, Kirsten was born on May 7th, 1920, and thus would have been 78 on July 14th, 1998, the date of one letter in which Robert Christian said that he was also 78 years old. Number 2, Kirsten lived for many years at the same address seen on one of the envelopes sent to Wyatt Martin. 3, Kirsten wrote a lot of letters that were published in newspapers, and in those letters he sounded strikingly similar to the manifesto by Robert Christian. So that brings us back to the Rosicrucian angle. Just as the Masons are essentially historically founded by stonemasons, the Rosicrucians are physician-based, or at least in the esoteric knowledge of medicine, that is. Either way, someone blew it up, and it's gone. I wanted to see it for myself, but that's off my list. Let's just say that population of mysterious monuments has also been reduced. Longevity wasn't a byproduct of the monument in Elberton, Georgia, that's for sure. So I guess technically, in the world of sports, it's Stonehenge 1, Guidestones 0. And this is box number 7.